everybody. I'm Jeremy. I live in South Brent. I am a member and lead of the 4Bees project. So that's short for the South Brent bugs, butterflies and bees. Like I say, it's part of Sustainable South Brent. Doorbell's just going, that's inconvenient. So yeah, the first slide shows the Wildflower Verge that we started to create, well, not to create, but to rehabilitate in 2019, which is, if those of you that know, South Brent is right by the roundabout. And yeah, there was, we identified an area of parish council land, so they own that land. We spoke to the parish council. Actually, no, it was Devon County Council. Forgive me, we're working on several pieces of land. We're just going to talk specifically about the Wildflower Verge today. And yeah, so Devon County Council, we got permission from the local highways chap, and yes, and then we went on to, we told him exactly what we were going to do. We tried different ways of managing the land. So we can see from the photo, we began with rotivating. We also did some reversing of the turfs. So you can see the lady on the left-hand side there, reversing turfs. We also did some scarifying. And most of this was done by using hand tools. Obviously, the rotivation was the only piece of machinery that involved, internal combustion engine. So I guess we have three principles now, at least in Sustainable South Brent: one, low carbon; two, nature; and three, community. So we feel the project fits pretty well with all of those things, and you'll see why as we go on. So yeah, that's the first thing we did. So we prepared the ground. Then we were involved with the local primary school, who we invited their eco reps. So they have a group of, I think it's 12 children, 2 from each year group. And they came along with their teachers, and they were invited to seed and rake the ground over. So that was a nice learning sort of experience for them. And then we waited. We waited a few months to see what would happen. And if we go on to the next slide. Can you see the next slide?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So this is a picture of the bank, which is the steepest part of the site, which we didn't do too much to be fair. And this is the area which has got the shallowest soil, and therefore actually it's got a really good diversity of species already in the sward, and you can see it flowering there with various different species. Move on to the next slide, which shows the bank in the other direction. Again, you can see, I think it's probably a slightly different time of year. So again, you've got a slightly different species composition showing there. But again, really nice flowering display of wildflowers, not, nothing kind of non-native, nothing introduced on that particular area. On the top area, like where we scarified, we did have a few of the seeded plants come through, things like yellow rattle. But I'll talk more about that in a minute. But I'll just keep going on with the process of how we manage the site. So I think it was very well received, quite a few comments in and around the village that got back to me, emails, just comments, generally, people saying they're really enjoying the display. And then we went on to, again, this demonstration of the low carbon sort of side of things, as well as the community side. We've got quite a few people in the village who know how to scythe, the traditional method of cutting hay meadows. And we've purchased a couple of scythes in addition to the ones that people already had. And we've tried to introduce people to scything. Obviously requires a risk assessment, but people really enjoy the activity. Actually, we only takes about an hour or two to do the whole lot with about 10 volunteers, but people really enjoy the opportunity to try their hand at something new. And again, there's no machinery involved, so that's a really nice side to it. We rake it all up. We take the arisings down to the local community compost, which is another sustainable South Bend project. So you can see somebody here raking the arisings up, bagging it up, and then taking it away down to the marsh site. So really sort of come towards the end of the presentation, short and sweet. I just wanted to say a few things about what we've learned. We went in and did that scarification. We tried different methods of disturbing the sward to begin with, as I explained at the start. And actually, if I were to do this again, I would have just left it to see what we had, because as it turned out, the bank was the most diverse and actually had a really nice species composition in it already. The top part that we did scarify, turns out it didn't have such a great species diversity. So actually we perhaps in hindsight were right to try to diversify the sward, but actually really you should just leave it, let it grow, which it hadn't been let grow for decades, and see what you've got before messing around with it. You might have a nice orchid, you might have all sorts of things, but you don't know until you let it grow. So that was one learning element. And then I would say, the second and the third bullet point essentially go hand in hand with what I've just said. Do you really need to scarify? Do you really need to rotivate? Make those decisions after you know what you've got there. I think the seeding was a really good engagement tool for the primary school, and the yellow rattle did seed in, but actually after about 2 years it's disappeared, and that's because you have to keep disturbing the sward for it to reseed, because it's an annual. So again, would I do that again? Probably not. I'd do something different to engage the primary school children. And then the last point I've added just now, really, because the grass cutters came by for the first time of the year 2 days ago, and I spoke to them, and I have seen them quite a lot over the last few years, and I've made sure I've developed a relationship with them. They're nice people, and I just reminded them to sort of stay clear of the Wildflower area, and we discussed where it was, and they mowed the wrong bit. So they've mowed the bank, which is the nicest bit, which I told them not to. But it is only April, and it's been a very cold April, so actually I don't think much harm done. They have made mistakes before, so it's just to say you've got to keep the message going, spread the message in the community, which I have now done on Facebook, because we have a network called the South Brent Wildlife Garden Network. So I've put out a couple of pictures of what they've done and what it should look like, and sort of asked people to just be aware, and if they come by again, just to have a word and remind them where the Wildflower area is. So I mean, we did try delineating it to separate it, but I think it fell. I'm not going to point at any members of the community, but signs were removed. So that's the end of my presentation, and I think, are we having questions?
I think so, Jeremy.
Time for questions?
Yeah, because I know you have to leave. Otherwise, I would have left it till after Adam. But yes, does anyone have any questions? If you wouldn't mind stopping sharing, and then I'll be able to see everybody. That would be great. So yeah, hands up if you have question. Faith.
Hi, that's really interesting. Thanks, Jeremy. We're trying to do a similar thing in Ugborough, but with smaller patches of ground. I was just wondering if you could tell me where you sourced your seed from, if you remember, and whether you got funding for that, please.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's actually quite a small area. The area that I'm talking about, but I guess maybe in Ugborough it would be even smaller. We got the seeds from Goran Farm, GOREN, which is in East Devon, which because there's this whole thing about seed provenance and not necessarily wanting to be importing seeds, certainly from abroad. Same species, but different, perhaps slightly different genetics. So yeah, Goran Farm, it's near, look it up online, they've got a website, you can order through the website, you can order all sorts of seeds. Apparently it's amazing to go there, you know, probably in May, June, when the flowers are flowering, which I think you can do if you get in touch with them in advance. Goran Farm. And yes, we got funding from, should have said this already, from Grow Wild, which was a part of, well, hosted by Kew Gardens. And I think we got £500 worth of funding in total through one of our younger members. So there was a fund available for people under 25 to enhance their community for wildlife, and we got funding to plant an orchard and at the local doctor's surgery, as well as putting some seed on the Wildflower Verge. So yeah.
That's great, thank you.